And I'll share my screen. Is this one? You see my screen, Keith?
I do. It's got a beautiful screenshot of Discord.
Ooh, awesome. That's Inception, right?
Yes, it's going nested, yep.
All right, so what I figure we do today is what I decided we'd do today, because Keith wanted to talk about DNS and DHCP, is I figured I would poke using the router as a DNS and DHCP server a little bit, and then if there's time, we'll have a quick look at like the Windows way of doing things there, and then more of the enterprise way of doing things, depending on how much time we have. But I figured it should be fun. So what I've done is I'm just running a virtual desktop that will be our guinea pig for all this, and there's nothing fancy about it. It's just connected to my router, and that's all we're doing for the time being. So I'll start with DHCP because that's the one that most people are familiar with. And as you know from the CCNA, the router can be a DHCP server. And we do that by creating a pool. I'm just going to make sure I don't have anything here already. So that's not going to hurt anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a DHCP pool. And we give it a name, so we're just going to call this desktops. And we have a lot of options here. Now, normally with the CCNA, we basically just do the network, and we do the, what else do we do here? The gateway, why can I not see you? Default router, and then the DNS and that kind of stuff there. And that's where we're basically going to focus on. And then we'll jump into a bit more niche scenarios where we might have to do more fancy things. So we'll pick an address range. So we're just going to say, I don't know, 192.168.123.0. Now you can do your subnet mask like this, but you can also do slash notification here if you want to. So you can say /24 and it will figure it out for you. Really up to you how you want to handle that. And this is going to control the IP addresses that are allocated to the range. So, here's someone type in there. Do you mind muting? Alrighty. So anyway, this is the IP ranges that are going to be allocated based on this. And we want to have a default gateway so we can get out.
Donald, one thing, this is a real router you're using to the serial port?
Yeah, this is, well, it's a virtual router I'm using for a serial port. So what that looks like is...
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just to finish the thought. So I have a virtual router here. This is a Cisco 8000, 8000V. And what I do is I attach a serial interface. When this loads, it always takes a second in VMware. Okay, it's taking much longer. My song's finished. All right, well, when that pops up, oh, just ran, I gave up on it. So anyway, I add a serial port, and then what I do is I output the serial to something called a named pipe, which is this value here. And then when I connect to my secure CRT, it takes forever. There we go. And then I just connect to a serial and use that name pipe, and that's how I simulate using serial stuff in my lab there. It's just a little bit cleaner than having to SSH to everything, because this way, if I reboot or whatnot, I see it. But anyway, so we have our IP range. We have our default gateway, which is the IP address on our router. It doesn't have to be the one on the router there, but this is basically how the host is going to get online. And then we have a couple other options that we care about. So we might want the domain name. So I'm just going to say the packet thrower, and it's just going to supply the domain name with the DHCP. We want DNS Server. So I'm going to point to my DNS here. And that should be about it for a first kick at the can. So if I do DHCP, we can see that we have 123, 123, and DNS domain name and such. So I need to change my IP address. So we're just going to go default int, and then we'll say that this is going to be this guy here, and we'll say no shut. So the way this works is that when the interface is in the subnet, or it's going to be listening for the DHCP that's defined here. So that's how it's going to know. Or if it has a helper set up, if it receives the helper, it's going to see if the subnet that the client was from is also in one of the pools there. So that's how it figures out which pool to allocate things. But with that, I should be able to go to my desktop. It's over here. And we're just going to go ahead and pull out this interface. So you can see here that I have 192.168.123.2, and we have .2 because .1 is on the router, and it's the next available IP address. Some DHCP servers like Linux will work backwards there, so I will get 254 instead, and it'll work its way down. It just really depends on the server logic. But we can see that I have received the right IP, the right subnet mask, the gateway. I can see what DHCP server I have, and I can see that my DNS servers are working just fine. So the first thing we need to do is, okay, that typing is bugging me. Who is it? I'm going to find you. Mute.
I don't see him showing up there, Donald. I have my eye on it too. If I see him again, I'll do it, but I don't see it coming in.
I think I got the right one. If not, I apologize to whoever that was.
Okay.
All right. All right. So, lost my train of thought here. The IP address is set, and we got .2. So if we want to see that on the router, we can do show IP DHCP binding. And we can see that we have the IP address. We have what's called the client ID. This will be important later. And we see the lease time and information about what interfaces and stuff it came out of. So the first thing that you often want to do is you want to carve off part of your DHCP pool so that your servers and static IP things don't conflict. And you can do that just by using the DHCP excluded IP address. And then you just enter in the range. So you're just going to go 192.123, we'll say 1 to 99. So we're going to start our DHCP at 100. So now, if I go back to my desktop here.
Hey, Donald.
Yep.
Could you do something super fun for me? Would you just temporarily assign this guy that IP address at .100? Oh, well, do you have another device you can assign that IP address of .100? I want to see a conflict.
Okay, well, let's just prove this works, and then we'll do that.
Okay, thanks, buddy.
My question is whether it will work or not, or you don't have that idea. Have you tried it before?
What's that?
I'm asking Keith.
Yeah, it's easy to create a conflict. And if you do a show DHCP conflicts, I think it'll show you the actual conflicts I saw.
Oh, yeah, we'll look at that in 1 sec here.
Yeah, that's also assuming, though, that the client is going to respond to a ping, which with a firewall it may not. But
Well, when we control the lab environment, we can do all kinds of fun stuff. Alright, so that should sort itself out. Let me just boot another desktop. I think is probably the easiest way to do this.
I think on that one, it's also possible that guy, because he had an IP address within the lease period, he just did a renew instead of a discover.
Yeah, that's
And
why
so
it's clear
I think
at the
that's why he
database.
got the old graph.
Yeah, so let's just say that this guy. There we go. All right, so there's our 100. So that's our that is our excluded range working. So what Keith wants is just add a new interface. And then I'm going to connect that to this LAN segment, which is my router, and start it up. All right, well, that magic's happening. Let's wait a bit. We'll just see.
So is there a way to like force like a negative acknowledgement on people that have had existing leases and you do not want them to be on like outside of the range?
Well, basically what's going to happen here is this controls the range. So if you say that you're doing excluded addresses there, it's just simply not going to ever do anything in the ranges that you exclude. So if you wanted to make sure no one did a static IP or whatnot, that's where you get into more like 802.1x territory where you're controlling all the session information. But this is more just simple shorthand. There's more security stuff we can get to as we get deeper.
But you had that one machine that even though you shut the interface down and brought it back up, it kept getting .2.
Well, that was just more some of the quirks of the virtual environment. Where I flapped the interface, but it's not really flapping an interface. So like if I was on a switchboard, that'd be a bit more different. But it really depends on how much you care. Usually, you don't care that much there. Like if something is on the wrong lease for a little bit, it's not usually a big deal. But you would shorten the lease time, that kind of stuff, and then when it does its renewals, it would get the proper one. And of course, some updates installed on this desktop. It shouldn't take too long, hopefully.
You know, Donald, do you have another router that you can just put on that same subnet? Because those guys can be tweaked super fast, right? As far as the client.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I can do that too.
Yeah, because Windows is so painful.
Let's see what starts up first. It's a race against time. All right, well, that's race is working itself out. Let's just do a couple other things. So if you notice the client ID, what this is made of is 01, and then this is the MAC address of the desktop. So if I go over to here, and we look at this guy, you can see the MAC address is 5 or D531, and this is D531. So this is how I can uniquely identify the client, and this lets me do things like reservations if I want to. So if I want to, I can say Ipdhp pool is going to be desktop 31, and then we're going to say client ID instead of the pool is going to be this. So now it's basically going to say when I see this client identifier, I'm going to match this and then get this IP address. So now I say instead of a subnet, I'm going to say host. And I can say 192.168.123.200, and we'll go /24. And I need to.
I think you gotta clear the DHCP lease before you can sign it.
I'm just being lazy, so I'm just going to say. See if this is booted up first before I get too deep into it. Keith's always throwing the curveball into the demonstrations there. Oh, there we go.
I apologize.
No worries, it's fun. All right.
Murphy's Law, right?
Yeah. All right, so. So this should be working more or less magically already. Yeah, okay, so this already got an IP. So what Keith wants is he wants a static IP. And we're going to stage this a little bit. So we're going to say is go back over here. And we're going to disable this so Windows doesn't freak out. To say DNS doesn't really matter for this. Make sure there's no firewall.
Thanks. Wow, why showing that command? Just to pop up the firewall. Good to see.
Oh, yeah. Firewall.cpl, and then the other good one is NCPA. And the other good one is ncpa.cpl. This is how you get to your network connections right away.
Thanks. Yeah, much appreciated. Love those.
All right, so did the same thing over here. Okay, that's off. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to. The binding's active still, so I'm just going to start this up again. No, I'm going to start up. I'm going to clear this. DHCP binding. So there's no bindings. We're no DHCP. Then we're going to go back over to our desktop 2, which is our static. We're going to. Okay, you're already there. All right, so just for fun, we're going to say do debug IP DHCP server packet and event. And let's see what happens here. So we'll go back over to here, and we'll go boom. Assignment failure.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. Just got done now.
All right, good times.
Yeah.
Can you, Donald, can you do the command show IP DHCP conflict?
Yep, so you can see that the ping method worked, and you can see here that it ended up assigning 102. So if I confirm that, we have 102, and the conflict command, if I can type, says that it's detected with ping.
Keith, what about ARP here? You mentioned that ARP is also doing that conflict, right?
Well, the ARP is the predecessor to the ping.
Yeah, you can actually change it. So if you want to, you can go IP DHCP ping, and then you can adjust things like how many pings it gets and how you want to do the conflict. So you can go conflict here and resolution, and you can adjust this as you need to there. But for the most part, ping is fast and easy, if a little bit flawed. The other thing too is that Windows and your Macs and those kind of stuff there have a duplicate address detection built in there, so they'll freak out if they notice another IP address there, because they're going to do their gratuitous ARPs when they get their IPs to there. So you should be fairly confident you're not going to get too many issues in a properly configured network. But anyway, so that's that. So what we'll do then is we will see if we can finish this thought. So I'm just going to shut this off. And we'll clear our database again. Then I should be able to go to the post. All right, so now what I've done here is we're clear, is we added a static reservation. So basically, if this client identifier, which is basically the MAC address, is found, it's going to give it this IP address, or it should. So now, if I start this up again.
So if you were to actually firewall ICMP pings, would the DHCP ping test fail? Or pass, I guess, depending on how you look at it.
It would pass. So basically how it looks is that if it pings something, gets a response, it assumes that it's in use and moves on. If it fails, then it assumes it's free. So basically that's how you would get duplicate IP addresses there. Because remember, Cisco, DHCP, and DNS and that kind of stuff there, it's not meant to be enterprise grade stuff there. It's just more to help you out if you can't or don't want to run a Windows DHCP server. So it's not meant to.
Is there a way to do the
What's that?
Is there a way to do that? I think it was Keith saying there was like the predecessor's ARP.
It might not be in this version, but in older ones you could. I don't think it's in the modern. It's basically been dropped from all DHCP, but if you had like an older iOS 12, it might still be there. I honestly don't remember.
Because of CCIE, Keith has already been used it. That's why I know that's why he's telling regarding ARP.
Yeah. I mean, when I did my CCA stuff, I spent all kinds of stuff doing weird parameters like that. Same with Keith. It's a good way to spend a Saturday night. Anyway, so if I do show IP DHCP binding, so that's a reservation. so that is the main core of what you guys care about for DHCP. So this is a reservation. You would just add this for printers, that kind of stuff there where you want static IPs if you're doing this. The other way you can go that's worth using is to go back to our desktops. We could say phones instead, and we'll just say whatever network. And then the other thing you would do is you can use options to extend what is sent to your to your device. So, for example, a phone requires option 150 to get the call manager. So if I actually, you know what? I'm going to go to my 3850.
Or it could also use option 66 if it's a third-party client.
No reading ahead in class.
Wait, what?
No reading ahead in class.
Okay then. No, I was just simply mentioning that.
Well, you're right, but okay, I don't have any phones to configure. But for example, this is an access point for my Cisco access points. And this is how you provision a Cisco access point with DHCP. You use option 43. And this scary hex is something that we'll talk about when I finally get around to making that wireless video for Keith. But what it is, where's my pen? Come on. There we go. So basically, it's always F1, and then 04 is how many controllers are in the thing there. So it's either going to be 4 or 8, 1 or 2. And then this is the IP address of the controller written out in hex there. So this is actually 10.30.111.40 if you were to convert that over. But so anyway, this is one example. And then the other way to go, we'll clear that, is...
An example of the TLB, right?
Yeah. For using a wireless, but for a phone, my call manager is 14.101, so I could do that. Or before someone rudely jumped ahead, you could use option 66, and you could enter in the DNS name if you wanted to register that way. There, most people prefer 150 because it's one less thing that's you're dependent on. So really up to you guys how you do that, but so that's options. We don't need to spend too much time on it. The more fun part is DNS, because not a lot of people realize you can do DNS on a Cisco router.
Hey, Don.
Yep.
Wait, what?
I was, are you still going to get into, we talked about how, getting into a little bit to how the IP helper relay operates and why it does what it does?
Yeah, I'm sure I could do that before I jump ship.
Okay.
Let me just let me do this. Here's what I'll do. So
we just talked about that. That's all.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. It's easy to do. So this is my AP. Okay. Is that a VRF? I don't think that is. All right, we're doing it live. All right, so what we're going to do then is we're instead going, instead of doing, actually, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. Copy that so I don't forget it. We're going to copy all this.
My apologies for leaking audio.
Yeah, no worries. Okay,
I realize I got a server meeting there, but I wanted to mute myself at the same time.
And yet we still hear you. All good, buddy.
Because I had to unserver mute myself.
Wow. All right, well, unless you got something to add, try and say quiet, bud. All right, so where was it here? So I added the DHCP and into my switch, and what we're gonna do is I need to create an SVI for this to work. So I'm just gonna say, make sure that doesn't exist. Okay, so we're gonna say this is 192.123. I'm going to make sure this is, first I got to create the VLAN. And then this should be in OSPF already. It is. There's our spanning tree delay. All right, so we should be good here. All right, so now that we have moved to our switch, what we're going to do is we're going to delete what we have here. We're going to say no desktop, no 31, and no phones. And actually, you know what? We'll go debug, IP, DHCP, server, and we're going to have events and topics. So we should see the relay. Okay. All right. So what we do is we go to our gig 3, which is you know what? I got to change this to something else. Okay. All right, perfect world. This should work. So what we're going to say is gig 3, and then to use a helper, we do a helper address. Then all we do is type the IP address of what we have here. So what this is going to say is that when it gets a DHCP request on this interface, it's going to forward it to this IP and hope for the best. So if we go back to our test desktop, and start this up, what we should see is that you see that the boot request is do it this way. You see that the boot request is forwarded to the IP address. This is what the helper looks like. And then if we go over to here, I forgot to do term on. This might be a little bit too busy. Let's see here. Okay, so I have some broken routing to fix because what's happening here is that it's unicasting. That's the wrong one. It's a busy switch. Here we go. It's sending the reply back, but I don't think we can reach. Yeah, so I got to change the routing a little bit, but essentially that's what you would expect to see is that it gets the reply, the server itself finds it, and sends a reply back. So what we're going to do instead is actually, you know what? I don't need an interface here. It took it one step too far. That's good. And that. All right, so what we should see in a bit there is that this should get its IP address. Might need to restart it there, but basically what's going to happen here is that it should work itself out. I had a bit of I added the interface on here and I caused a routing conflict. I just took that off and that should be okay now. It's not trying, so let me just flap this again. You know what? I would also need to
Log in synchronous?
Yep.
That's driving me nuts.
There we go. I have to have routing 2, so it knows how to find that. So now we should be more or less okay. So if I go do... There you go, just for you. All right.
Thank you.
So I should be able to ping this now. I can, okay. So we will flap this again. Now we have all the pieces in place. But yeah, aside from the barrier, if you have to troubleshoot it like I'm doing, the main thing to keep in mind is that you just need to make sure that the DHCP server and the relay can reach each other. That's usually most of your issues. Yeah, this got an IP. All right, so this is on the internet now. This is my 200, so it's working fine now. So if we go... There we go. So we can see that this is working fine. Now this doesn't change because this is a static reservation, so it doesn't care. This is just always going to be here because this is a reservation. And if I was to flap the other desktop, we should also see that pop up here. So I'm going to go over here. Because as long as the lease is active, it's not actually going to care if you change servers, whatnot. So you would have to flap the interfaces if you're doing this in the lab or some other means, or do really short lease times. Oh, is it this one? Yeah, this is one.
Is it really recommended to have short lease times though? In case like the server goes down?
It's a trade-off, right? So you know, you should have DHCP redundancy, so you should have like a couple servers so that it never goes down. Most people like to have about a day in the business, like at least enough time for a working day. Oh wait, that's static IP. What am I thinking? Keith, you messed me up.
Do like a year-long DHCP release just so I can track clients down all the time.
Yeah. All right. Forgot Keith's landmine here. There we go. All right, so now we should have our DHCP. Okay, so anyway, that's a relay. That's the main thing, what you need to know about it. Basically, just forwards a packet, and then the pool or the server will look up the pool information based on where the DHCP relay was sent from, and then it's going to do that there. So you can see that it's passing the host name there if we're going to do dynamic DNS or whatnot, which is basically allowing the DNS server to be updated if the host or the IP changes. And it's not too much there. All right, back to what I was going to show you, which is the DNS server. All right, so not a lot of people know that a router can be a DNS server. And you can do that just by typing Ipdns server. And this enables the functionality. And now what's going to happen is that when it receives an entry, it will try and resolve it. So we can make an entry by doing the IP host command. And we'll go for a couple options here. But first one is we're just going to say that this is www.packetserver.com. Now we have a couple of choices here, not as much as like a Windows server, but you have like MX for mail, you have NS for a name server, and you have service record for more advanced implementations. So what we're just going to do is make an A record by just saying this is going to be whatever. And at this point, I should be able to go do ping www.packetserver.com. And that host doesn't actually exist, so it's not going to work. But if I go to my desktop here, actually, no, we're going to tie this together. We're going to go back to here. And what we're going to say is DNS server is going to be the router. And we'll do the same thing here. All right, so now we're using the router, so we're going to update our lease. And we should be able to ping our www, or at least to resolve it. Okay, so we have our new DNS server. So now if I go here and I go NS lookup, you see that the server address is here. And then if I want to change that, it's just server dan1. Now, if I type in www packet store, okay, so it didn't like that.
From this Windows server, can you ping that IP address of the 10.1?
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. That would do it. Why did I break
Resolve.
Donald, maybe routing is disabled, right?
Oh no,
Maybe
I forgot I had 10.1 in my mind. I forgot it's 1.2.3. Oopsie. All right, that's not a big deal. This is why we troubleshoot things. So we're just going to say that this is 1.2.3.1.
This is also why we have network diagrams.
Yeah, but then we have to maintain them.
I recognize that.
All right, so That is what I meant, because that is in the right subnet. All right, let's try this again. Helps if you use the right values, apparently. By the way, the CCNA does expect you know how to do like DHCP stuff on Windows and whatnot there, so you would also do like ipconfig/renew. And that would also get new lease information there.
So Donald, I use slash also, but I noticed that in the current versions of Windows, it also takes the dash.
I think I knew that, but I never really tried it. I'm stuck in my ways. Yeah, dash works too.
I don't ever use it, but I was shocked I saw that. I thought, what? What is this? What is this craziness?
Yeah,
I'm gonna throw this in. That is so wrong on so many levels because in Unix, a single hyphen is for a single letter, a double hyphen is for a word when you get into like the POSIX, like the parameter.
Well, I'm sure you could write Microsoft a note there and they'll get right on that for you.
Oh, no. Microsoft is trying to become more like Windows.
As long as it's completely broken, yes.
Yeah, as long as it's completely different, yeah.
Well, you know, there we go.
Yeah.
All right, so if you use the right DNS server, guess what it works. So you can see I've added www, and we have this working. Now, if I want forwarding, I can just say, okay, I want name server to be my name servers, and then I want IP domain lookup. And now what should happen is if I try this again from our desktop, I should be able to get to Google. So if I type in www.google.ca, okay, so Google is resolving. So this is very basic DNS server. It's not going to change your world, but it's, well, I guess I set that up on my switch, and I guess I already set that up on my router, so I was lucky. But just for argument's sake, I will copy this stuff and paste it here. All right. So if we want to get more fancy, we can use something called views to segment our traffic and to have it so each interface is treated differently. So what we can say is IP DNS view, and we'll call this desktops. Inside of view, we can define various things. So I can say DNS forwarding. And I can say source interface is going to be gig 8 for me. I can say the forwarders are my own DNS servers. But if I wanted to, I could say that, you know what, I want to use Google. Just one at a time here. So I can use completely different DNS servers for this view if I felt like it. And then I can add some other values here. So I say I want to enable lookups. I want to give it a domain name. We'll say packet forwarder. We can give it, we don't need to mess with the other stuff. I'll just point out that if you want to do like round robin, you can change how Cisco treats the interfaces. So if you want it so that it tries the next DNS server every single time, or if you want it so it only tries the next one when it fails, you can enable or disable round robin. But with that should be enough for a view. And now we're going to add something called a name list. And what this does is this lets us block particular domains as a basic security. So we're just going to say that we are going to match google.ca and google.com. So now that I've matched this, I am going to now make a view list, and we'll just call this desktops again. Now what we do is we say that the view is desktops. This is the one I just created, and 1 for a number. And then we have restrict. So we say the name group is 1. So even though I said permit here, it's basically permitting to deny. But if I chose reject, it's also going to deny it here. So if I reference anything here, it's just going to reject it with either a success or a failure in the DNS mechanism. So it's just, if you want to block a domain name, that's how you do it. And then finally what we do is we go to here, we say DNS view, and I need to say desktops. So in a perfect world, if I go back over to my desktop here, and I go here, oh, that's what quite what I wanted. Yahoo and still in business. Let's try that again. So www. Okay, so now my www won't work anymore because I put it in a different view, so I need to create that record. And unless I messed up, let me keep typing that. I need to say...
So that they actually allow you to define multiple definitions in different views? Or is this more like an ACL thing in Cisco?
It's a different view. I'll figure out why the restrict crew isn't working later, but yeah, so you can have as many views as you want there, and the idea is you can have it so it rolls through different... you could have a bunch of them, so you could say that I'm going to try the internal servers first, and then I'm going to try the external servers, and that kind of thing. So I do show hosts. Oh, you know what? I need to clear this. Clear IP host. All right. I'm going to try this one more time, and then I'm just going to move on. But now that I cleared this, I should be able to prevent the resolution now. So if I go to the desktop, and we search for google.com, and you know what? We're going to go ipconfig flush DNS. And well, let's try here. Okay, well, I probably broke the restrict feature. Let me just have a look at it. But the more important thing is the view. Anything, google.com. Desktop. Yeah, that should work. Anyway, the last thing I'll show you on DNS that's worth seeing is that when you create your host entries here, if you want to do a view, you would type view here, and then you would say www, and we'll say that this is 90. So now if I resolve this, this should work because I put this in its view, so now it should be able to resolve it when it looks. So,
Okay, so you can do it.
Yeah. So again, this is a real pain. You don't want to do this for anything more than the basics, but it's there. Let me just go to here. All right, so if I type in www, All right, my you broke something here, so let me just do this. I'm going to take out the restriction.
Do they have the concept of a default if you define like a view?
Well, everything is in the default view by default, just like a VRF, everything's in the global routing table unless you say otherwise. So there actually is a do show IP DNS view default. Like it exists already, and it's just stuff you put on your router. Let's try it again. I think I might have broke something here. There we go. So let me just try this. See if I got this backwards in my head. Deny. Yeah, it's breaking when I do that. But it's not a feature you're ever going to really use. It's one of those things there that if you're in the CCIE lab, they'll throw it at you to make you look at the documentation. But if I go,
that'd be very useful for like VPNs and stuff where you need to redirect them to two different locations. Split versus, well, not split, but you know what I mean, right? If they're coming over the VPN, you might not want them hitting the NAT interface, and you might not be able to, depending on like the...
Yeah, that's what it's for. You can use it for like split DNS scenarios and that kind of thing. Okay, well, I give up on the restrictions. It's not worth spending any time on. I had it working before the lab and Murphy's Law, but... yeah, so basically the idea is you would use the restrict to prevent certain queries. But
that is cool. I didn't realize that. Like, I never looked too far. I never looked into views at all. I didn't realize they got restrictions and stuff.
Well, it's good to expand your views on things.
But when you're done with the list, you just import like a list, and then it does all of them, so you don't have to do it manually.
You could. It's just this is not really the recommended way to go. Like the better way to go would be to use Windows or Linux or Infoblox. So real quick, this is a Windows DNS server. One of my domain controllers. So
yeah, PowerShell is really good to use that kind of policy there with split DNS. So router.
Yeah, PowerShell and that kind of stuff. Like it has its own thing. So one of the main ways to do this there is you would create your zones, and then I have a bunch of records for my lab stuff. But for example, if I wanted that www, I would add www, and then I would actually I did this properly. So because it's a subnet or a new subnet, I would have to create a reverse lookup, which is basically what the pointer records are, so that it can validate that the response comes from the right spot. So what you would do is you would first add a reverse lookup zone, and this would be 123, and you can see what it does is just reverses the subnet in the name. And then what I would do is I'll go over here, and if I wanted my www, I would just say whatever, 200, and we'll create a pointer record. And what am I doing? We'll say this is whatever. So what we're saying is we're creating a pointer record, and then we're deciding if we want the record to be able to be updated by dynamic DNS or not. But that's all we need to do to add it. The new way of doing it is you use the Windows Admin Center, which is the web-based. So this would be this guy here. One sec. All right, so this is the Windows Admin Center. So because Cisco or Microsoft's been pushing more towards web management. So what you do here is you pick your domain name stuff. So this would be this here. And then I would connect to the server.
Nowadays, in CentOS also the view for DHCP and DNS, they are using it in for CentOS too.
Yeah, this basically is for full server management. So you can see it has like Azure in here, it has local groups, and it's just going to load the modules in a minute.
So is this like an API-driven DNS Center kind of deal? Or?
Well, it's not DNA Center. It's for Microsoft, but it's basically like a central management for your servers. It's just trying to replace the need to actually connect to the server or use the server tools. So, for example, if we go to DNS here, you can see that it has it's still new. Like you can see the DNS functionality is still in preview. It's a little bit slow, but once it loads,
you have to install.
Yeah. So basically, there's a bunch of modules. I'll show you when we're done this. Alright, it's taking a minute.
This is a service. Have you installed like the management tool? We used to install the DNS, right? Likewise, you have to install it, or you need a special software for it.
For this? No, that's just native. You install this from Microsoft, and then you add the servers in the previous page, and then it just connects with it shares your credentials.
Yeah. So either you can install it on a Windows 10 system and it just runs locally, or you can install it on a Windows Server system and it runs in what's called gateway mode, where it's like web server. You can access it from any system on the network.
Okay, there we go. So if we click on my domain here, so we can see that we have our records. So I created, what was it, www? So this guy's here. So if I wanted to update this, I can just go edit and do that there. If I wanted to add my own, I can do that here. So it's up to you guys what you prefer to do. I kind of like using the tool for the most part, but you can add your records here. So Microsoft and Linux whatnot is a much more robust way of handling your DNS and your DHCP than Cisco. Speaking of DHCP, we have that here too.
I don't know, if you were to use automation like Ansible or something, it's nice to be able to just put in like a single line to add a DNS record.
Well, they're all the same principle. I mean, this has PowerShell. Like, there's 100 different ways to add things, right? But if I want to add a scope here, I would just say like desktops. I would say starting address is. That's one thing about the.
Careful with your autofill there. I've seen an address show up.
Yeah, but this rather than doing the excluded addresses kind of thing there, you in Microsoft you can just tell it which things to assign there, and you don't need to worry about excluded ranges. And then you add your options. So this would be 123.1, and so on and so forth. I'll go create. Now, if I wanted to, I could go back to my router here, and I should be able to say now. It's worth noting that you can have as many helper addresses as you want, so you can point this to a bunch of different DHCP servers and whatnot if you need to there, and this is useful for certain things like 8021X implementations and stuff, but we'll just delete the ones we don't want, and if I refresh this, we should get an IP address from my Windows Server, unless I boomered something, which is possible.
Likely.
You know, I already have. Nah, sometimes. If you squint. And let me just check that there, because I just installed that DHCP server and I don't know if it's actually running. So let's just go to here. Yeah, it wasn't authorized. So you have to actually authorize things in Microsoft for some extra security and enable the. Yeah, there we go. Now the scope's active. So that's what it looks like if you use the traditional GUI. So you have your scope, and then you have like your leases and so on and so forth. So if I refresh this again.
And just to add to that authorization option is authorizing the server in the Active Directory.
Yeah. Okay, so something's weird with my IP address, but it got the other option, so I wasn't expecting that. Let me just see what I actually did here. Just boom. That should be fine.
Hey, Donald, is the other DHCP server still running somewhere?
Yeah, maybe we'll just say goodbye to that. All right, let's try this one more time, and then we'll just peter out there. But we got half the addresses.
Donald, one small question. Here also the conflict may occur, right?
Yeah, so the conflict in Windows is same kind of idea, it's just configured differently. So if you go under the properties, there is.
I have already faced with this issue, that's why I asked.
Yeah, so by default, Microsoft doesn't try and do conflict detection because of the issues with ping. So, but if you want it, you could just put this up, and they're going to try this once or twice before it does it. There, depends on how you guys handle it. But Microsoft doesn't like conflict detection, but it's off by default. But you can turn it on if you want it.
They want to be perceived as having fast leases, I guess.
Well, there's that, and then just for the fact that ping has its own issues, that it's
default firewalls.
Yeah, so they just kind of try and avoid it. Okay, so this is all weird.
In my company, they use PF Sons. In my company, they use PF Sons. So if if normally this pings, they have mentioned it as a ping, it will be getting avoided, or they have to allow us allow with the ACL of firewall. Is that possible?
Oh yeah, for sure. You can do whatever you want to do with your firewall. You can permit whatever you want to permit.
Thanks.
Okay. I don't know why this is acting halfway there. After all the good things they said about Microsoft, so let's just. You know what? I'm just going to delete the scope and try it again. Something's odd here. Alright, so this is how you do it in the traditional way. I'm going to assume maybe the admin center messed up, so we'll just say desktops. And then, well, you can also do exclusion if you want to. You don't really need to because you can pick the range. But if you want to explicitly exclude it, you can. Duration, so 8 days is default. Most people like to do like a day or something. It doesn't really matter depending on your environment. Options, so we want to add the default gateway for sure. DNS servers is going to propagate the domain controllers that it knows about in your domain by default. Wins is something you don't really need to worry about these days, and activate. Alright, let's try this one last try here. Oh. It already got one. Alright, so I'm gonna guess when I did the A and C there, because it wasn't activated in Active Directory or authorized. I think that it caused an issue, but anyway, this is what I was expecting to see. We got an IP address right away, and we have our thing there. If I wanted to, I could. If I want this to be a reservation, it's now a reservation by just right-clicking it. I can do more fancy things there, like for example, dynamic DNS is enabled there. So what should happen is if I look at the DNS record for this, I would see that the IP address should update automatically for me. So if I go to desktop there, no, that's not in my Active Directory. But if it was in my Active Directory, it would automatically update the record in the DNS server for us. So if I did a new record here, I could say desktop 31. And then I would just say create a pointer record and allow anyone to update it. And then what would happen there is if I change the IP address, then it would take care of that for me. So if I go back over to DHCP, what I could do is I could say under reservations, if I wanted, I could delete that. Then maybe what I would do is I would renew this guy. And we should be in business.
Just a tip, whatever's in bold is what happens if you double click.
True. True.
That is a very handy tip. I didn't know that until today.
What's that?
An old one.
No, I didn't know that. I think you had also mentioned that in Linux commands it's dashes for a letter and then double dashes for a word. I didn't even know that. That makes things a whole lot clearer to me.
Generally, you get the odd package that just does whatever they want, but
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But okay, yeah, it can't be annoyed to get a new IP address there, but what would happen is that if I got a new IP address, it would update the DNS record. So anyway, that's Windows. Just real quick, I'll do a real quick overview of the more enterprise way of doing that, and that is something called Infoblox. And what this
More
does,
grid.
what's that?
I said more grid.
Exactly. So I don't want to go too much into this, but this is the enterprise version of the Ipam and DNS and DHCP management that big companies use. So, for example, we can see that I have Ipam set up for that IP address range. And you can see that it has been tracking which records have been created. So you can see that because I made that DNS record, it has it's said that 150 is in use and so on and so forth. So if I go here, I don't know if it's actually does.
A small question here. Previously, we added a network excluder, right? In that network exclude, we can add the server's history too, or we can avoid.
If you exclude an address, then what you're basically saying is you don't want DHCP to assign it. So the expectation is you would use something like
like defaultly, as our IP is hidden to the network, right? It will be present like is in the network, but it is not available to all the clients.
I'm gonna try again.
Like what is it? For example, if 8.8.8 is Google DNS, it is the server it is assigned as an, if it is assigned as an IP, like it will get a conflict, right? DNS conflict may occur, right?
No, it has to be in the
Likewise,
same, it has to be in the same ARC segment to be considered IP conflict. So if you had a network, like I think you're trying to say if you used a subnet of 8.8.8/24 in your lab.
No. Sorry. 1 minute. Previously, I have concluded, I have excluded that 123.12.99, right? In those segments, the IP is present as a server. If the server gets that IP, like it is present in the network, but it is excluded from the DHCP authorization.
Yeah, because the server is supposed to have a static IP.
Yeah. That's what I asked. Thanks.
Okay, fair enough. Anyway, so just real quick, so the IPAM's job is to track what's actually used in your network. So the idea here is once it gets this there, you can automate, and I'll do another segment on this next time I talk to you guys because this is a really deep topic, but basically what you could do is you can automate to say, give me the next free IP address, and then it's going to say like, okay, well, 200 and 201 are used, but 202 is your next one, and then it would allocate it. It also manages your DHCP and your DNS. It integrates with pretty much anything out there, so I've integrated this with my DHCP servers. So you can see here, you can see the allocations already. And big topic, but the idea here is that these become your central single point of truth for your IPs, and then going forward you could use this for all your services, or you build this into your automation so that you're always getting a unique IP address, and more importantly it's keeping track of what the server is, because a lot of people, they will use a spreadsheet to track this down, and then if say Keith makes a server and takes 6, then Keith might forget to update the server there, and then when I want to make a server a month later, I might pick 6 and then realize there's a conflict, and whereas if I just say pick the next address, we don't need to worry about that. So this is the next grade there, and a bit of a preview of what I'll talk about next time, but This is the really huge price point.
With that same address. 1 week after Keith makes a change.
I didn't quite hear that. What was that?
I was saying, if we were using spreadsheets and I made a server change, basically built the server on .6 after 1 week, or 1 week after Keith built the server on .6, and got up to the spreadsheet. Yeah, it can become a real mess.
Yeah, so that's why Ipam's worth all the money there. There's not too many solutions out there. Infoblox is the top of the industry. Jeremy's from
Jeremy Stretch is Netbox.
Yeah, that's the one. Jerry Stretch. Couldn't remember his last name for a second. His Netbox is a popular open source one there. SolarWinds has an Ipam, though SolarWinds is kind of black eye right now. But there's not too many on the market. But anyway, I just wanted to show you this as a quick little preview. But for a wrap up,
Don, which one you said was the open source one? What was it called?
Netbox. It's made by Jeremy Stretch. Yep.
Netbox.
I'll post a link to it, and I'll post a link to the GitHub repository and voice chat.
Yeah, I might do another demo on it just to show you guys what it looks like there. I prefer Infoblox, but Netbox is fine for a free solution.
Okay.
But all right, I'm gonna wrap
Albeit
up.
Netbox does not have the automation features that Infoblox has.
Well, no, it's a free solution.
Because it's open source, you can build it into the system.
Yeah, well.
As soon as you know how to do that.
Yeah, I'll point it out when we get there, unless someone else does it. But all right, let's try here. Any last questions before I wrap up?
What is the remember option in Cisco?
Oh. So this
I
is...
never tried this before. That remember option I never tried.
So you're saying you don't remember? So all it does is it remembers the release bindings. So basically just tells the router to keep to know that, hey, this was previously allocated there, and this is just more like an audit log. So it's not really a big deal, but
Does it influence it? Like, does it influence the leases that it hands out anyway?
no, it's just that when you like if you don't have it there, if once I clear a binding, it's gone forever. The router doesn't care. So if you need something with more of an audit perspective, then all you do is just go remember, and then that's basically it. It's not on by default, but basically, if we have more stuff going through here, it would. That's all it would do.
Hey, Don, I have a question for you.
Okay.
In my environment, I have about several Microsoft DHCP servers. Almost every month I see a number of bad IP addresses in each server. I'm just wondering what could cause the DHCP servers to register an IP as bad.
It's usually conflict detection.
Conflict detection. Okay.
Yeah, it's usually conflict detection that causes that, where it gets what it perceives as a weird response, and then it says it's a bad address. So that's one of the reasons a lot of people like to leave that off.
Oh, I'm not even sure if I have it turned on. I didn't even check for the conflict detection if it's turned on.
Well, it's more likely than not. Otherwise, it's just the client is sending some weird information that the server doesn't understand, and it's just saying, I don't like you. I've seen it a few times there, but usually you just, as long as you have a clean network environment and whatnot, you should be fine there.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Any last questions? Keith, you still with us?
I am. Donald, thank you very, very much. I learned a ton today. I appreciate you.
Cool. Any parting questions before we go? Or thoughts?
No, thank you as well. I learned some stuff today. I hope we have another session like this next week.
Well, we usually alternate, so I think Calvin gets next time. And then I will So you can skip that one. And then once when I'm back, I'm gonna probably continue with the Ipam path because I think that would be interesting for you guys. And then I think Calvin said he was gonna do Active Directory. Calvin, you still there? Active Directory, right? There you go.
I don't see him.
Or whatever.
It's not in voice chat.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he said Active Directory. One last thing to point out is if you want to use a local DHCP address on an interface, you can actually just type DHCP. And this is going to just get the IP address on the actual interface of the router. Sometimes it's useful if like you have a dynamic connection. If you want to change the client ID where you can pick which interfaces are used for that. And if you want to change the host name field, you can go ahead and provide that there because some DHCP servers can expect certain host name values or that kind of thing there, so you can do that too. But I just want to point that out before we ended it. All right, I will wrap this up. Talk to you guys soon. There's might have some interesting announcements coming soon, so stay tuned. But otherwise, I'll talk to you guys next time.
All right, next time.
All right, so we'll go here and then we'll go... hang up.